why historical fiction matters. There's something about historical fiction that feels almost illegal, like you're sneaking into the past through the back door, not with a textbook or a lecture, but with a story that moves, that breathes, that bleeds. You don't just read about war, you're in the room where the bombs drop. You don't study revolutions. You feel the hunger, the fear, the betrayal. You sit at the kitchen table with people long gone, and for a few hundred pages, their lives become yours. That is why I love historical fiction. It's not about grand battles or famous kings, though sometimes those appear. It's about the quiet details history books leave out. The girl who hides a book under her bed, the houseboy who witnesses a nation split in two, the mother hunted by a choice no one should ever have to make. Good historical fiction doesn't teach you a lesson. It leaves you with something heavier, something you carry for days, sometimes years. And the best ones, they don't just show you the past. They make you question the present. So, in this video, I'm not listing the most famous historical novels. I'm not interested in popularity contests. These are 5 books that did something to me, that reached into the past, grabbed something hot and heavy, and placed it quietly in my chest. If you've ever wanted to feel history, not just learn it, these are for you. Let's begin. The Book Thief by Markus Zusak. If you've never read The Book Thief, let me warn you, it will break your heart in the most tender, quiet way. Set in Nazi Germany, it follows a young girl named Liesel, sent to live with foster parents in a small town. She is illiterate when we first meet her, but slowly, through the stolen books she hides under her pillow and the words her kind-hearted foster father teaches her, language becomes her refuge. And here is the twist. The story is narrated by death. Yes, death. And not the grim cliche you're expecting. This death is weary, thoughtful, overworked. He carries the souls of the dead and watches over the living with a kind of reluctant tenderness. He's tired of war, tired of the cruelty we inflict on each other. And yet, he can't look away from Liesel and the small moments of light she manages to steal from a dark, collapsing world. This is not a book about Hitler. It's not even really about war. It's about the human things that survive it. A father playing the accordion to calm a frightened child. A Jewish man hiding in a basement writing stories to keep himself sane. A girl collecting words like other kids collect coins. It's a book about the weight of silence, the danger of language, and the way stories can save you. Sometimes, literally. And here is what stunned me. Despite the setting, despite the sorrow, this book is weirdly full of love. Not romance, but love that feels ordinary and enormous at the same time. There's a line that stuck with me long after I closed the final page. That says, "I am haunted by humans." That line, that's historical fiction at its best. Because the past isn't just dates and dictators. It's people, flawed, afraid, full of contradictions. And when you finish The Book Thief, you feel like you've met some of them and maybe even loved them. The Night Watch by Sarah Waters. Some books feel like walking through a city at night where you can't quite see everything, but you sense that something important is hidden just out of sight. The Night Watch is one of those books. Set in 1940s London during and after the Second World War, This novel doesn't give you a traditional war story. There are no generals, no battlefields. Instead, we're dropped into the lives of four very ordinary people trying to survive the extraordinary. A woman named Kay, who drives an ambulance during the Blitz and walks the city like a ghost afterward. A young girl named Viv, who is caught in a love that is slowly rotting from the inside. A man just released from prison, trying to piece his life back together. And Helen, whose heart is full of secrets she can't name, even to herself. What makes this book especially brilliant is how it moves backwards in time. We start in 1947 with the wreckage, the broken relationships, the quiet trauma, the ache of things unsaid. Then we move to 1944 and finally 1941. The deeper we go, the more everything makes sense. It's like watching grief in reverse. And somehow, that is even sadder. But The Night Watch isn't just a clever structure. It's a book about loneliness, about how war changes not just cities, but private lives, romances, friendships, the way you look at your own face in the mirror. It's also one of the most sensitive portrayals of queer life in that era I've ever read. There is no spectacle, no forced tragedy, just people trying to love in a world that keeps breaking apart. Sarah Waters writes with a kind of quiet intensity. Her prose doesn't shout, it watches, listens, and what it finds in the silence is often more powerful than any explosion. Historical fiction usually zooms out, shows you the grand sweep of events. The Night Watch zooms in, so close you can hear the tick of the clock as time rewinds. And when you reach the beginning of the story, you realize the ending has been quietly waiting there all along. Beloved by Toni Morrison. Some books don't feel like books. They feel like wounds or warnings or sacred things you're not quite sure you're ready for. Beloved is all of that. Toni Morrison doesn't write historical fiction in the usual sense. She doesn't just place a story in the past. She resurrects the past, makes it walk around your room, whisper in your ear, breathe on the back of your neck. Set shortly after the end of the American Civil War, Beloved tells the story of Seth, a formerly enslaved woman trying to build a life in freedom, but haunted, quite literally, by the ghost of her dead daughter, a daughter she killed rather than allow to be taken back into slavery. That is the premise. But the book is about so much more. It's about memory, not as something that lives in the mind, but in the body, in the walls, in the way people speak or refuse to speak. It's about a trauma so vast that it spills over generations. It's about survival and what surviving costs. Morrison's language is lush, poetic, hypnotic. At times, it's almost overwhelming, but that is the point. Slavery wasn't neat. The aftermath isn't tidy. Beloved doesn't comfort you. It shakes you. It makes you sit in the mess. And the ghost? She's not just a character. She's history. She's guilt. She's the question nobody wants to ask out loud. What have we done? And what does it mean to live with it? There is a line Morrison once gave in an interview that I think about often. If you can only be tall because someone is on their knees, then you have a serious problem. Beloved is a story of people on their knees, trying to stand, trying to forget, trying to remember, trying to love in a world that taught them they were not meant to. It's not an easy read, but then again, history isn't easy. And some books are not meant to entertain you. They are meant to change you. The Name of the Rose by Umberto Eco. If you've ever wanted to time travel to the Middle Ages, but with a magnifying glass in one hand and a Latin dictionary in the other, this is your book. The Name of the Rose is set in a 14th century Italian monastery. Cold stone corridors, flickering candlelight, monks whispering secrets in the dark. But at its heart, it's a murder mystery. Several monks die under strange, increasingly bizarre circumstances. And it's up to Brother William of Baskerville, yes, that name is intentional, to figure out what is going on. He's part of Sherlock Holmes, part medieval scholar, and part heretic, depending on who you ask. But here is the thing, the murders are not the main event, they are the bait. What Umberto Eco is really doing here is taking you on a dizzying tour of medieval Europe, its theology, its politics, its obsession with heresy, and its brutal resistance to laughter, doubt, and books themselves. Because at the heart of the mystery is a forbidden book. A book so dangerous it kills. Why? Because it makes people laugh. Yes, laugh. The idea that laughter could be subversive, that joy and comedy could shake the foundations of a faith built on fear. That's the kind of question Eco explores with both reverence and mischief. He doesn't just write about history, he writes about ideas in history, ideas that were once dangerous and maybe still are. The novel is dense. It doesn't hold your hand, but if you're patient, it rewards you with a world that feels entirely real, not romanticized, not sanitized, but full of rot, debate, fire, genius, and the constant tension between what is sacred and what is human. Eco himself was a medievalist and a semiotician, a scholar of signs and symbols. You feel that in every sentence, but more than anything, the Name of the Rose is a book about books, the power of them, the fear of them, the people willing to die and kill for them. And somewhere in that maze of dead monks and burning libraries, you start to realize you're not just solving a mystery, you're witnessing the birth of modern thought, when people began to question, to reason, to laugh in the face of authority. It's not an easy read, but the past rarely is. And this one lingers, like the scent of parchment and candle wax in a long forgotten library. Half of a Yellow Sun by Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie. Some novels are history lessons wrapped in emotion. Others are love stories that bleed into war. Half of a Yellow Sun is both. Set in Nigeria during the 1960s, it follows three characters as the country tears itself apart during the Biafran War, a conflict that is often forgotten, especially outside Africa, but claimed over 1 million lives, mostly through starvation. There is Ugu, a village boy who becomes a houseboy to a university professor. There's Olanna, the professor's partner, beautiful and brilliant, but living through a personal heartbreak and national tragedy. And there's Richard, a British writer who has fallen in love with both Nigeria and Olanna's twin sister, equally torn, equally lost. What Adichie does so well is show how war doesn't just happen to armies or governments. It happens to kitchens, to love affairs, to classrooms. It interrupts breakfast. It sleeps into your bones. And she doesn't write with bitterness. She writes with clear eyed humanity. Her prose is clean, unfuzzy, but emotionally rich. The violence in the book isn't gratuitous, it's personal. It arrives slowly, like a stain spreading across fabric you hope to keep clean. One of the most powerful things about Half of a Yellow Sun is how it explores identity, not just national identity, for the private kinds. Who are you when your country breaks apart? When your language, your tribe, your name suddenly become political? What do you hold on to? What do you give up to survive? The title comes from the symbol on the flag of Biafra, a rising sun, a hopeful beginning. But as the story unfolds, that hope is tested again and again, and you're left asking, how much can people endure before the light goes out? Adichie never preaches. She doesn't tell you what to think, but she gives you something harder, a window. And when you look through it, you don't just see Nigeria in the 1960s. You see hunger, division, propaganda, silence. You see how history happens, not just in headlines, but in homes. And maybe, if you're paying attention, you see echoes of now, reading the past to understand the present. The thing about historical fiction is that it refuses to stay in the past. You pick up a book to escape, to go somewhere far, far away in time. And before you know it, you're seeing yourself in the mirror of people long dead. Their fears, their longings, their quiet acts of courage and cruelty. They don't feel ancient. They feel uncomfortably familiar. That's the trick. History may not repeat itself exactly, but it hums with the same rhythms. War, love, betrayal, hope. It's all there. And these books, these five, don't just reconstruct the world as it was. They ask what we've learned, if we've learned anything at all. The Book Thief shows us the danger of silence and the strange grace of words. The Night Watch reminds us that even in peace, the war lingers in people's eyes. Beloved makes us confront the ghosts we pretend aren't there. The Name of the Rose warns us about the kind of truth that can survive in a locked room. And Half of a Yellow Sun asks what a nation is worth when it's torn between memory and forgetting. You don't need a degree in history to feel the weight of these stories. You just need a heart that is willing to ache a little. And maybe that is what the best historical fiction does. It doesn't just teach you the past, it prepares you for the present. So, if you're looking for something to read this summer, something that challenges you, moves you, maybe even haunts you, start here. The past is waiting and it's still speaking.